hello. Um, hello. Haha. Borderline podcast Disordarians. This is me. I hope you had a good week. And I had a bit of a weird week. I was ill again, and not just ill. I had to go to. I went to hospital for a checkup, and we finally figure out what um, was happening with my stomach. I had like a inflammation or something, and I'm trying to get that sorted. But yeah, it was a bit annoying. A bit frustrating. I just felt like throwing up constantly. But you know what? It's fine. We're getting there eventually. And yeah, I got a couple of gigs lined up. I don't think this week, but the week after. However, I got one more test to check something like gastrointestinal stuff on Monday. So actually, I think when this episode it's coming out. Um, yeah, so that's that. And then today's interview or today's conversation is with a comedian, a very good comedian, Matthew Ali, and we had a bit of a technical difficulty during the recording when one of the microphones stopped, not the input two out of the audio interface stopped working, and so we had to restart recording. And because the first bit actually it just crashed, the first 20 minutes, and it was so good. It was such a good conversation. We were talking about you know burning out, and we were just talking about what, like, because Matt has been like up to a lot, like he's been working hard and he's been doing loads of things for a long time. And we were talking about how he's finally looking for this really cool break, some time to relax. He was talking about going to Rome, going to Italy, play some rugby with some friends that he's in a team with, and then just hang out, just have a good time. And then we lost that recording, and then we had to restart. But the way we had to restart now, I we had to do almost like a, like one of those interviews on TV when you just pass the mic along. um so yeah, it's been interesting. It's been a learning curve as well. But I still think we had a nice conversation. Yeah, I still think we had a good conversation, and and again, it was lovely speaking to him. We bumped into each other a few times at a few comedy shows, and it's always been a pleasure. He's a very he's a lovely person to be around, and it showed on the on this again on this hour long um, recording that we've made. I think because, again, yeah, because of the whole like health stuff that's happened this week, um that was pretty much like all my energy and time focused. Obviously, I enjoy the football. I am looking forward to the Olympics as well. And you know what, Pickle and Sarma are just being so lovely to have around. Although we had to give them a bath a couple of days ago, and it was a very challenging day. It took a day to eventually get them both have the bath, and yeah, it was hard. But you know what? It's so wonderful to be around them, and they make us so happy, and I hope they are happy as well. I want them to be happy. And you know what? I'm just gonna let you enjoy the interview, and I'll catch you later. Okay, well, welcome to today's podcast. We had some technical difficulties, but it looks like we are back on in one way or another. So, yeah, Matt, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm okay. Um, yeah, I was. I mean, What have you been up to recently?
Lots of gigging, lots of gigging, um, and lots more gigging. I'm trying to watch like a pro comedy show once a month at least. It's just trying like almost like a practice, instead of watching loads of open mics. I try and see what I'm aspiring to. So I've been putting those in as well.
Who did you try to see recently?
Recently, I've seen Tom Horton, who I'm a big fan of. Um, booked to see Dan Tiernan, who I love, and we had at our show before. I've seen Michelle Buteau, but that was a couple of months ago.
I mean, it still counts. Like the last gig that I've been to, I think it was last year.
Really?
Yeah.
No, I really think it's important to go because there was like a period where I was just gigging so much, and especially on the open mic scene. I mean, I'd say this as a person who's coming from the open mic scene, but there's just a lot of developing comedy, shall we say. And I feel like seeing pros in their element is really helpful to see what I and we can aspire to. Because I have intentions of doing really well in comedy, or at least, making it a full time career. So I think it's important to both experience the comedy that is happening around us, but also see what could be possible in the future.
That's interesting to the way you were saying, like, it's something that we aspire towards. And how did you get around it? Like, what was your, how did you get around, I guess, choosing comedy, or like choosing comedy as like your outlet, or like choosing comedy as something that you want to do and work towards? Were you always a comedian? Were you dabbling with any other sort of arts before?
Comedy was never the first choice, actually. So I used to host my own podcast with a friend of mine, and I've always seen myself as a great public speaker and someone who's quite quick on their feet and can build a rapport quite quickly. So in my mind, I wanted to be a presenter, and it's still something I want to do. And I've always thought I was quite funny, and I thought that I'd seen a lot of stand-up comedians go from being a comedian to doing presenting. And that was really it. I didn't think I would actually love comedy that much. I absolutely love doing stand up comedy, but I didn't expect that. And I didn't think I would take to it so quickly. I thought it would take me a while. Um, it was more the hosting and presenting that helped me go into comedy, and comedy just turned into a passion from it, really.
I mean, that's incredible because in the grand scheme of things, you've how long have you done comedy for?
2 years, yeah. So just over 2 years. March. It was like late March was 2 years.
And that's a incredibly, like, the things that you have done and the achievements that you have achieved, and the level that you've got to in those 2 years is it's brilliant. It's like it's really incredible. And it's interesting to hear that you're saying basically like the hosting, or the side of I guess, yeah, being quick on your feet helped you out with this.
I do, and I think my age has also helped. Like, so I started when I was 34. I didn't start when I was younger, and I've been performing on and off over the past few years. And my job, when I had a career job, like it was, I mean, I'm not doing comedy full time. I've just changed my day job to help supplement the performing, which I love, and I'm able to do so because it's just me. I have no partner. I don't have a mortgage or anything like that, so I don't need money. But I used to be a trainer, a corporate trainer. So, when you start your jobs, you'd have to be like, oh, okay, what's our culture? What's the history of this? I'd be there at the front being like, hello, everyone, tell us your name, one thing about you and why and so I've always been in front of people. I've always felt comfortable in, standing there and performing in front of people. So although the comedy was really new, it doesn't feel like I was just coming off of like zero, and I feel like my strength in comedy now and performing has always been my presence and like the clarity with which I speak and my personality coming forward. And I had that before I started the comedy.
Okay, and what was your I guess choice of like art, or what was your first sort of like art form that you enjoyed as a kid, I guess?
So I used to draw a lot when I was younger. When I was in school, I was really into Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z. And I would say like anime, but not like the deep, intense sort of like real hardcore anime. It was more like the stuff that came over and was a bit more mainstream. And I used to draw a lot of those. I used to copy them as much as I can and then try and build my own characters. I used to do like comic books and stuff. And then the first time I performed acting was in secondary school. So when I was like 14 or 15, I auditioned for like the school play and got into that. And then ever since then, do you know what I never mentioned? I used to do music a lot as well. I used to perform music. Yeah, so I've always done like loads of different things. So I used to play the viola. and the piano and a saxophone. I did that for years.
Wait, was that like what you taught, or was it, what did you self thought to play those instruments?
I was taught. So we had a music teacher in school, and she felt like I had talent because we did some exercises in the regular sort of music classes that everyone would have. And one of them, I remember we had like a xylophone in front of us and everyone had it. And then she would play a note and we had to like find the note and then do it. And I kept on getting it first time. So she thought I had really good pitch. Which maybe I do, maybe I don't, I don't know. And she felt like that was just like a natural talent. So they would pay for like the classes, but I couldn't choose which instrument. That's why it was the viola. So, you know, the like local kids and stuff that couldn't afford these sorts of things, they would help provide that. And so I got into music really early as well. I used to play that, do the gradings and everything like that. I didn't like the viola very much. I was really good at the saxophone, but everybody did the saxophone.
A very uneducated question, but what's a viola?
No, that's a great question. So do you know what a violin is?
Yes,
And do you know what a cello is?
I think so.
So a violin is like the string instrument that most people will see where they rest it on their shoulder. It's a slightly larger version of that, so it plays a lower set of tone. Yeah, so it's an alto register.
So it's not. It's a bass.
No, because that stands, so that you put on the floor. You still rest this on your shoulder. You play it exactly the same way as the violin. It's just larger, so therefore plays a lower set of notes.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Well, I learned that now.
It's viola, so no one knows what that is. It's really hard to get people to play the viola.
And so it means that if you play the viola, you can play the violin as well.
Not really. Yeah, technically, I guess it's the same thing, but the notes are different. So you'd have to. And also, it's one of the only. This is really boring. It's one of the only instruments. So, did you ever play music growing up or anything, or read music?
I have played. No, I actually haven't played. I've read music. I had to learn like the notes and everything. So yeah, I did that for 4 years.
So, with like reading music, you've got the treble clef, which is the higher notes, and the bass clef. This one is the only one of the only ones that is an alto clef. So it looks ever so slightly different. And there's not many instruments. I couldn't name them all, but there's very few instruments that use that. Like the way the music. Yeah, yeah. The very middle line is a middle C on it, and you don't get that on a lot of instruments.
Well, fair enough. God, this is incredible. I didn't expect this. But so okay, I mean, you done music. You did some acting. You what would you do? What did you study? Did you go like to university?
I did. I went to university in North London and I studied theatre arts. And so I tried acting for a while. I dropped out of university though after 2 years because like it wasn't the right environment for me. I wasn't a particularly good actor, to be quite honest with you. And the the people that were on the course, actors, I feel like are a particular type of person, and I just never felt like I fitted that mold where especially at the time, everything was like, no matter where you were, everything was a performance and a fight to grab attention. And a lot of people think that I am an attention seeker. I don't believe that. I think attention follows me. And so it just happens. And sometimes I don't like attention. Sometimes I like to be quiet and just sort of like, be a bit more internalized and stuff like that. And yeah, I just never really fit in with the people that were there. So along with that, as well as the course and other things that are happening, it just wasn't the right place for me. So I dropped out. Yeah.
So interesting enough, because you're talking about everything is a performance, and obviously we do comedy now, and how do you basically set those boundaries now? I guess in a personal life between um, basically like when you want the attention and say when you don't want the attention. Like, does it take you a long time to switch from, say, when you're doing your writing or even when you're performing on stage? Does it take you a long time to then switch off and be like, okay, I'm off stage now, I'd rather have my own time? Like, how does that look like for you?
I think that's such an interesting question, right? Because I think now that I've started performing really regularly, I found that I am probably fitting into the category of the type of person I didn't like. And that is trying to be funny in situations where it's not necessarily warranted. So at the moment, I'm probably more expressive and trying to be more funny in situations than I ever have. And it's something that I guess I'm aware of and conscious of, but I'm trying to find this balance of saying and doing what comes natural to me at the time and not censoring myself, but also not trying to dominate. Back in the day, because of my own insecurities about a lot of different things, it was easy for me to hold back. But me holding back for someone who I feel like I'm quite sensitive and expressive caused me a lot of issues internally. It made me have a lot of sort of anxious feelings and anxiety growing up. So now at this point in my life, I want to express myself the way that I want to. So I'm currently battling trying to do that, but not dominate situations. And there are situations in my real life where I'm trying to be funny too much and I can feel it. And I'm like, I don't know why I'm doing this. Like, it's so unnecessary. And so, yeah. Now, so I'm probably one of those people that I didn't like growing up.
And then how do you, because I find basically that sometimes I find myself in situations that I'm like, why did I do it? Why did I do this? Or like I'm halfway on a sentence off stage, or again after writing, and then I'm just having a, a, a serious conversation with, say, my partner or work related, whatever, with friends, etc. And then I try to turn it into a bit sometimes, but then halfway through the sentence, I'm like, hang on a minute, what is this? Why is this coming out? Do you get that?
I don't often, even though I'm rattling on now, I don't feel like I often make long winded statements. So mine tends to be really quick and sharp. So once it's happened, it's done and it's gone. So I have the moment from after it's left my mouth to the next thing I say to at least think about it. Yeah. So it's not very often. When I'm saying I try and make things funny, it's more like a quip, like something really short and sharp. So yeah, I don't often find myself going into these long bits. It's never been my style.
And how did you change a lot comedy style from where you started, where you were like, oh, this is what I want to do, or like this is the kind of person I am, this is the person I am on stage, or did you kind of find, I guess, your like stage persona and you just like rolled with it ever since?
I always knew what my personality and persona was going to be from the get go. It was going to be an extension of myself. So I have a lot. I don't have many insecurities, and I tend to have a lot of. I think what's the word? High self esteem for many elements of my personality. One of which is I think I've got a really engaging personality. I believe that in myself. So I knew that when I was gonna go and start performing, I was just gonna do me, but more. So some things that people say to me now is like, you get much gayer when you go on stage, and that's true. It's true because I don't think I'm super effeminate. I think I can be quite camp, which I think is different. I think camp is like an expression, right? Effeminate is just being like, like almost like, I don't want to say it, but I'm going to say it like ladylike, like a woman in an old sense. Whereas I don't think I'm super feminine in a lot of cases. I do have feminine traits for sure. I think everybody has masculine and feminine traits. But no, I always knew what is really interesting though is despite the fact that I said that, like, I think I'm quite quick witted and you see me perform, I try and talk to the audience quite a lot, right? And I try and engage with them. When I very first started doing comedy, all of that left. All of that left. And for the first few months, I was just trying to be a stand up comedian. And so I wasn't engaging with the audience. I wasn't in tune with what was happening because I was so concerned about my material that I wasn't speaking to anybody. And I was doing quite well, like fine, but it never felt, there was always something missing. And I did a gig. It was probably about 8 months into performing. And I did a gig and it was quite a big audience. It was like sort of 70 or 80 people. So that was one of the biggest ones I'd done at the time. And there was the MC, then there was two other acts, and there was me. And the MC, in my opinion, and maybe the audience's, wasn't particularly strong. And so I didn't really get them going. And I was looking forward to it because it was one of the biggest gigs I'd done at the time. It was one of my first paid ones. I was looking forward to it. Then the first two acts went on and they didn't do particularly well. They're probably not my favorite comedian, maybe. I don't need to add that. I don't know why.
Follow our Patreon if you want to know the name of Nudge.
And then I went on and I didn't do particularly well either, right? So all of us had done not so well. So, sometimes you go into those places, you're like, oh, it's just one of those hard rooms. It's just very difficult. It's a hard room. It's a hard room. None of us are doing particularly well. Then this next act came on, and for the first 7 minutes of their set, they were just talking to the audience members, were going around talking to them, getting them engaged, and it just changed the room. It lifted it. Everything had changed, and so there was that act, and it was just the headliner as well. And they talk a lot. It's someone I'm still in contact with now, who's done my own show, and I love them. I'm going to see them soon, and because they were so in tune with the people in the audience, it just lifted it. So it wasn't a tough room. They needed to be engaged. They needed to be worked with. And I remember saying, and this is April, I was like, at this point, I need to go back to who I am as a person. I know I have the skill set. Not everybody does, but I know I've got the skill set to engage the audience and think quickly, I just need to trust it. And I didn't trust it when I first started. And so from that point onwards, the new bits I included were questions to ask the audience. So I have a few bits that I do which lead on to material, but begin with a question to the audience and actually get them to engage. And sometimes I might get a response that I'm not used to. A lot of them now I can kind of direct it, but also now I trust that I'm quick-witted enough to come up with something, because I've had that skill set all my life.
That's so impressive. And now, because I'm really excited to learn more about you as a person. But before we move on to that, a question that just hit me now: is it in a sense of? I mean, I don't know if it's a question, but basically, I'm just gonna ask you this, and then I'm really I'm looking forward to see what you think. But because to me, as you were saying this, I found that when I watch professional like stand-up like comedy shows online, like well, again on Netflix online, I sound like I've just discovered the internet on the web. No, when you go on Netflix, like it's all like an hour or 45 minutes or an hour and 10 minutes of but like joke back to back to back to back. And it just hit me now that sometimes the most of the times when I go and see comedians like closing shows on purpose or sorry on purpose, closing show in person. Yeah, the what's the word? The crowd work. It's so like it's something that you actually don't see it until again you're in the club or until you're in the night where you're a name on the bill rather than you are the name on the poster sort of thing. You know, like you say you have like Matthew Ali, and then you have an hour where you just talk about yourself or you just do your jokes back to back. But then when you go into a thing where it's like 5 comedians and it happens to, and now you just basically hit me. Was that like sort of a realization for you that, oh, like good or the comedians who are actually managing to do really well are the ones who get to speak with the audiences and infiltrate that? Or are you kind of saying that you kind of like check the temperature of the room and then you choose whether you're going to do your crowd work or whether the crowd work is not necessary and you're just going to do your material?
I kind of think it's a little bit of both, actually. And what I mean by that is as a person who takes in entertainment, and even before I started doing comedy, I like to feel involved. I've never done particularly well. I need shifts of energy, and I need the audience to be involved when I'm in. I really struggle if someone's almost doing a monologue on stage for comedy and none of it involves the audience. I know I've never really enjoyed that particularly myself. So I think there needs, and I'm not saying it needs to be talking to audience. I just think there needs to be a shift in energy and focus for an audience member to stay engaged for an extended period of time. And I think that time is longer than 20 minutes, right? Based on now being a performer, right? But I also think I am good at engaging with the audience and I have quick wit. So I need to rely on what I think is good for me. I'm not a particularly strong joke writer. I've known that and it's something I need to work on. So I needed to lean into what works for me. And so that I've always found that a lot of the open mic comedians are very strong joke writers, but maybe have never performed before. I've performed all my life or been on stage and been in front of people and had some sort of charismatic energy all my life. So I need to lean into that. That's what I did. It worked for me. I can do that. I'm not saying everybody needs to do it, but for me to do well, I needed to engage the audience because my jokes weren't strong enough. And so I've started trying to be better at writing jokes, and I'm getting there slowly but surely. But I needed to lean into I've got the charisma and I've got the quick wit to really propel myself forward, and that's what's made me stand out so far. So the answer is both. There needs to be a shift of energy, but also I can only say that I needed to do that, not everybody.
That is so incredible. The thing you were talking about, like the charisma, and you know that you basically again you kind of what your strengths are and you work on them, and you also acknowledge say like what your weaknesses are, and again you're trying to find the work with what you've got, and but then you were talking about like being aware that you have like this charisma, but then also we were talking about like how difficult it's been for you, for example, like university, where you were like, oh, I really like it's harder to like again to have like the friendships or to what how how does that change? Like, how when does it click for you? When do you see the charisma like clicking and actually working in your favor? And then when like how what was the difference, or like what kind of like when did you start to realize, or I don't know, again, like how did that work for you basically, when you were like, oh, actually, again, this is not really working out, I'm not having as much fun, or like I'm not managing to feel like I'm a part of it's something. And then now you're again, because I remember seeing you doing crowd work, and you're like, and within 5 minutes everyone's just on board, and yeah, when did that started?
That's really tough because I can't really pinpoint when it is. I feel like I've always felt like I've had a certain energy, right, that people feed off of. And I've known that that's been there all of my life, but I'm not exactly sure how or why. I think it's just been there. The challenge was and is to this day is because my quick wit or mind always led to insulting people for fun, right? That is my go-to. So when I'm talking to the crowd, it's always a little jab and it's a little cheeky jab. But when I was younger, it was too direct. It was too quick, and I had built no rapport with the individuals around me, right? So, and I would say it, I might meet you for the first time and just insult something about you. And to me, that's how I build rapport. But that's not how some people like to receive information, especially when I had this real knack of getting something that was really close to the bone to how they feel about themselves. I don't know what it is, but I can really hone in on people's insecurities, and it can be used for power, or for evil, for good or for bad, kind of thing. When I was younger, and my lack of filter meant that I was just insulting people willy nilly. I was just saying how I feel and what I feel, and it didn't matter who was in the firing line. But I was super defensive about it, to the point where I would just say it again and double down. If they can't take it, fuck them. This is me. This is how I speak. It it eventually ended in me feeling very insecure about myself in the workplace, and with like what I would call like a lack of friends. And I wanted more friends as opposed to the quality of friends. I don't have loads of friends now, but I've got really strong relationships. And it changed around the age it changed sort of around the age of like 26, 27. I had a really bad incident at work that ended in me having my final written warning and almost being fired. But it was completely set up by a manager that I pissed off. I pissed off my manager, and so and this is it's actually like crazy. Like, he went into work. I'd be at work at 6 o'clock. He got into work at 4:30 in the morning, set up the place, took loads of pictures, and then said that I'd done it, which is wild. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, and then he picked someone to do the disciplinary who was incompetent, told them the questions they needed to write, and then I think he was going to try and fire me. But my friend at work was a HR specialist, and he asked her to do it, but she said no because she's my friend and she was my witness, and it was just it was a mess. It was a mess of a situation. That moment, from that point onwards, I was like, I need to keep my mouth shut. I need to stop this because I'm getting myself in trouble. And that was like the culmination of things. I just kept getting myself in trouble with my big loud mouth, insulting people. And this wasn't insulting. I was basically just no filter. It was lack of filter. And then so I tried to be a lot nicer. But what happened is I wasn't being true to myself as a person. I was censoring myself in a lot of situations. And it caused me a lot of issues and what I call anxiety, or whatever feeling it was. I used to get it on and off from the age of sort of like 23, 24. But when I was 27 onwards, it was there every day for nearly 3 years. I'd wake up, this pain in my chest was there. I'd go to bed, it was there. It was there all the time. It affected my relationship. I had a boyfriend at the time. And it was just a really, really difficult time. Um, I ended up breaking up with my boyfriend. We broke up. We're still best friends now. And I started having therapy. And I was still really angry at that time. What I didn't say in that time is because I kept on censoring myself, I was really explosive. Like, my anger would like just flip. So people would, and I thought I was holding everything in really, really easy. But everyone was like, no, you're angry all the time. Really, really all the time. And it was just having like a few years of therapy and like kind of like giving myself a break, because I'm quite hard on myself even to this day, where I was just like, I just don't want to be like angry all the time. I don't want to be so explosive. I need to express myself as a person. And as I started doing that, people started warming to me a lot more. So I realized, if I am less angry and I smile more, then I can get away with the mean things that I say because people warm to you if you're nice. And I've always had my laugh and I've always had my smile, my cheeky little face. And it just worked a bit better for me, both in like a selfish way. And I noticed that if I smile and then say something mean, people are like, oh, it's just Matthew. But also it just made me a little bit happier.
That's funny when he goes, "Oh, he's just Matthew," but it's wild to think that basically because you were saying. So, if you don't mind me asking, if you not too much detail, what pictures? What was orchestrated? It sounds like it's sort of like a Jeffrey Dahmer, like someone breaking into his house and like finding corpses. I'm so sorry if you can't speak, it's fine, but I'm just curious.
So I used to work in a fast food chain of restaurants in London, and I was a deputy manager of this restaurant, and there was a manager and then the area manager, and my manager and the area manager were very, very poor. Now, one thing to remember, I've said that I have a lack of filter, and I'm quite direct, especially back then. I'm very confrontational. The other thing is I still have to this day a massive problem with implied authority. Right, so the police. Managers who tell you to do what to do without explaining it. I do not understand. Even to this day, I'm really belligerent. I cannot be managed poorly, in a workplace. And this is why comedy is really good because I don't have a manager to an extent. And they were just very, very bad managers. And what people do, I don't know if it's in the same Romania, but in this country, quite often, if someone's a bad manager, and I spoke about white British culture quite often, what people tend to do is say nothing. I didn't, and still to this day don't have the ability to say nothing. So I told them about themselves. I was like, I don't know what you're doing, but what you're doing is terrible. This is bad. This is bad. This is bad. This is bad. Now I wasn't wrong, but they didn't need to know it all the time. That's what I've learned. So there was a situation, and I don't even know if this is important for the podcast, but I'll say it and we can sort of choose. But before I'd gone into this restaurant, there was a guy at work who had basically slipped on running water that had been there for months, cut his hand open and needed surgery, so was unable to work. This person, I wasn't there when it started. Then I started in this restaurant, and a lawyer called and said, was I there, and asked me to verify some information. The big boss, said I needed to lie to the lawyer. I was really upset by the fact that he told me to lie, so I told his boss. His boss stood by him, so then I was the one in trouble. Because I was asked to lie to a lawyer. I told this person's boss, and they grouped together and said that I was the problem. So he came into me, told me all about myself. You don't do this. You're fucking this. You're fucking that. I don't know if you can swear. Yeah, okay. Right. And then 2 weeks later, my boss left, and there was a week where I was responsible for the restaurant. And in that week, he set up the store. So there were loads of food that was out of date. Poor like management of rotation. If you ever watch Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares, they're like, what's this in the kitchen? Out of date. There's that situation. So, like really old stock that's not supposed to be there, dirty, that sort of stuff. Because it was a very poorly run restaurant. That was one of the things I was complaining about. I was always saying the dates are incorrect. The place is dirty. We've got poor hygiene standards. Because I'd come from a place that wasn't like that. Told them about that. So that's what happened. He set it up, took all these pictures, said I was the manager responsible and that I needed to be that. When I was like, the other manager was here, which is 3 days ago. It's not my fault. And that's what happened.
This is what? Wow. Very well. It's such an.
Now, I'd like to also say that was a really stressful period of my life. And I questioned whether I was a bad judge of character. Turns out I wasn't. He was then fired for having Coke parties in the restaurants and sleeping with all of the stuff. He stole from the safes. That's what I'm saying.
Oh my God. What? I mean, it's crazy because I think when I talking about this is very random, but like the Coke culture in the hospitality in England, it's wild. I never heard about it, and then I worked in hospitality, and I remember once at the New Year's Eve party in the restaurant I worked in, I thought that the Hoovers went off, and I went to the changing room. No, it's true. But I was just that was so intriguing. But coming back to you, obviously that was like such a shit period of time, and I imagine for someone who like overthinks stuff and has to take a lot of time to like how did you get into therapy but in the first place, like was it because like I don't know, people were talking about it around you, was it something that you've been advised to do, did you like to, how did you get around that?
My best friend was in and is in therapy and said that I needed to sort of have it. And my family are quite old school in their like behaviors and feelings. I think they're like therapy is a scam kind of situation. So I was always like, no, I don't need therapy. I don't need it. After all that happened at that workplace, work was quite difficult for me. But it was weird because after all that happened, I basically stopped opening my mouth, stopped speaking. And as soon as I did that in that workplace, I suddenly progressed really, really quickly. Right. So before I was really stagnant in progression. I was this deputy manager for a long time. Kept my mouth shut. 4 months later, I became a general manager. A year later, I became another manager. And then I was running these really successful restaurants. And so I was like, this is the key, keeping my mouth shut. That is the key. Matthew, and under every circumstance, keep your mouth shut and you will do well. The issue is that does not do me well as a person. I need to express myself. One, because I have loads of judgmental feelings, and also because I'm super sensitive and I think really fast and I need to get it out. But I wasn't doing that for years. So as I said, it affected my relationship because I was in a relationship for nearly 3 years and we didn't have one argument that wasn't a drunken explosion one. We never sat down and had an open conversation about how our relationship was going once in 3 years, which I think is bad because we moved in with each other and we're both as bad as each other, but we just never spoke about things. And I'm quite a passive aggressive person. So there was a lot of passive aggressive behaviors and he was quite spiteful. So there's a lot of spiteful behavior. And once we'd broken up, work had gone really badly because I was progressing, but I just wasn't happy. And my relationship was really hard. And I was like, this is something needs to change. Something needs to change because whatever I'm doing isn't working for me. It's not okay. Like, it's really hard. I was living with my boyfriend at the time and we'd broken up and I'd moved back home for a couple of months. Um, I don't know if what's left over from before, but when I came out to my mum, it went so badly that I kind of didn't ever let her into my life. We didn't have a good relationship all of my 20s. When I moved back home, she did something that surprised me. I was very sad. Work wasn't great. Just broken up with my boyfriend. I love him now. I love him then. She sat me down and she was like, Matthew, we need to talk. That doesn't happen in the Ali household. We never speak. And it's true about feelings. And she's like, I feel like you're really unhappy and I feel like you never tell me anything about your life. Why? Why are you doing this? And basically it all just came out. When I told you about being gay, all of these things happened. This is how you treated me. I was prepared to leave, all of this sorts of stuff. And we had this really open conversation. And I call it the most important conversation I've ever had in my life because at that point, I understood her. She forgave me a lot sooner than I'd forgiven her because she told my brothers that she accepts me for who I am, but she never told me that. And from that point onwards, it's like, I need to express myself. I need to talk about things because I can't do this anymore. And so, I started having therapy. I found this therapist has been the one and only therapist I've had, worked really well because I know that sometimes it's about finding the right match. She's been incredible from day dot. Because I don't like authority very much. I don't like being told what to do. She never told me about anything. She suggests, like maybe this is something. And if I don't, and I quite often feel like I know exactly what I think. I'd be like, no, that's not it. She doesn't push it anymore, and she allows me space to speak. So when I first started, it would be 30 minutes of me. I was still, at the time I was still holding things in. So I used to like be raring to go to speak and I was having it weekly. I have it every 2 weeks now. I'd build up everything. I'm like, I can't wait to say it. First 20, 30 minutes is just me just going, blah, 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 everything, this is how I feel. She's there just nodding, and eventually it became a conversation. Once I'd got everything out and, got my sort of coping mechanisms through her and managed to apply the things that we'd spoke about in therapy throughout the week, because we had different mechanisms. At the time, she was the only safety that I had. There was no safety. And then eventually we spoke about things that I need and put those into practice. And eventually it started becoming, and I still have therapy to this day.
Well, two things. Well, I will start with the therapy one. Because I know, for example, I did therapy around 2021. I think I started. So it was like, no, maybe, no, 2020. During 2020, I started doing therapy. And I was still like, yeah, holding off, like loads of, I guess, secrets. I would kind of speak about stuff, but I wouldn't really speak about it. And then I think I ended up seeing like I've seen a guy, and then a guy therapist, and he was like, "Oh, I don't understand." Sometimes he wouldn't understand what I was saying, but also he was very authoritarian. I found him, and I think which was quite funny because he was also a Eastern European guy, and I was like, you just remind me of everyone that I'm actually coming in here to, moan about, based on like my, family members and stuff like this. And I was like, oh, I don't really like this, and I found it really hard to take advice from him because, like, no, I feel like, are they paying you?
No, absolutely. You have to find that, and I wouldn't be able to have someone who's telling me what to do. There's like no way that would ever happen because I don't like to be told what to do. So, and I don't know why that therapist would be there thinking they need to tell you what to do. Like it still doesn't make sense to me.
Again, look, fair enough. They were very well, like, credit whatever they call. They had a very good reputation and everything, and I'm sure they. And again, he's been really helpful to an extent. But I then remember I changed therapists, and I remember talking with like this woman, and we were chatting for almost a year, and she was like, you're still not. Yeah, 'cause she was like, you're still not talking to me as like the way I was expecting for you to eventually do. And I remember last year I eventually started, like I think I eventually started telling her about like, the things I used to do when I was a kid, like with like self harming and things like that. And then she was like, "That's it. Here it is. What took you so long?" And I was like, oh, okay, fair enough. And then I think a couple of months later, I got diagnosed with BPD. And she was like, okay, well, if you go to do because I did some like therapy that's related to people with borderline. So then she was like, okay, I think it might be a conflict of interest if you do both and it's taking too much of your time. We have to do the other one. And I genuinely remember feeling sad about leaving her, and yeah, it was just wild. But coming back, yeah, so that was the one thing where it's interesting that you managed to get it on the first. You said the first try.
Yeah, the first time I had it, I can't. I always tell people about the benefits of therapy for me, and I wish that therapy was available for everybody. But it's quite an elitist thing, I think, isn't it? Because of the cost. So you have to have the finances to be able to do it. I wish everybody could do it. I wish everybody in my family did it because it's so important. And the one thing I could say, which is interesting you say that about not opening up, and a few people I've said it to is for me, for therapy to work, you have to somehow have the ability to go all in straight away. And one thing I don't lack is the ability to express myself when I express myself. This is the reason why I stopped expressing myself because it was all or nothing, right? I don't have a huge amount of shame or embarrassment about certain situations. So I'm almost more than happy to go into as much detail as possible to my detriment in the past, because for me, I'm an all or nothing kind of person. So I think one of the reasons why it worked is I was all in immediately, give or take a few sessions, you know. But she did say to be fair, and something we're going through now is I do often talk about my feelings and how they are now and some of my triggers. But one thing I've not really done much is speak about the history of things. I haven't really gone into the time I was 21 and told my mum about being gay, or how I felt from the age of 15 to 21, because that was a really difficult but formative time for me. And I've always avoided it to a certain extent. And the relationship with my dad, for example, or lack thereof, I've never really gone into the real depth. I've always spoken about recent history. So I can understand why it might be difficult for you to do that, because for me, that's going into the real depth of like almost like shame or embarrassment or fear that I had growing up. But I talk about 25 onwards, 27 onwards. And so it's been really helpful for me. But now we're just starting talking about my time when I was in university, which was really, quite frankly, a horrible time. And I don't want to do it, but I know I need to do it. Now I'm in the right place to do it. I'm much more resilient as a person. I've got the strength to do it. Comedy has really helped fortify me as an individual, and I feel like now, much like performing and progressing in comedy and dealing with rejection, I feel like I'm in the right place to do it, because I embrace being emotional. I like to cry. I am afraid of going through those feelings again, because even when I think about how I felt at the age of 18 to 20, but I know and feel like now is the right time to do it.
That's so interesting when you were saying about the 15. So basically, just to give the context, from 15 to 21, is that when you're like trying to basically like accept, is it coming out? Or no, wait, 'cause it was how do is that the yeah? Sorry, yeah. If you want, you say it. What happened, or like what in not as many details as much details as you'd like, but what was happening between 15 and 21?
I don't know if it is related to my sexuality. And as I said, I hadn't really spoken about it too much with my therapist. But what had happened at the time was I'd gone to my sixth form college. I'd finished secondary school where I had my group of friends. It was very local to where I lived. And the way that I spoke and behaved was largely accepted because we were all like that. We were quite loud, quite brash, very direct. It was fine. And when I was 16, I went to a sixth form college about 30 minutes away that was well known for very smart children, and a lot of private school kids actually chose to go there. So it's very white, very upper middle class. And there, I really struggled to make connections, long term connections, and always felt separate from everybody. So I feel like, and same with college. I went to university. I went there. A lot of white people, a lot of performers, a lot of very British, white British culture that I still struggle with to this day. But I'm better with it now because I'm, a lot older. And I just never truly felt accepted, and people used to think I was a bitch, and I am a bitch. I've never denied it. But it wasn't super accepted, and rejection has always been a massive part of my life. It'll be something I'll go through with my therapist and my friends and stuff from a young age, and she thinks it's got to do with like my dad and all that sort of stuff, and maybe being rejection is a massive thing of being gay because I always thought I was going to be rejected, and to an extent was by my family, well, not my family, my mum. So I've gone a roundabout way of saying that, like, I think all of those things, my sexuality did play a part in it. Actually being rejected by a lot of people at university was a big problem. Like, they did some mean things that still, I think, still have some repercussions now, that I need to go into, because the biggest thing is I think it will help my comedy, right? Because one of the things that's happening now is, and I've spoken about my persona and who I am as a person, that's gotten me away with a lot of stuff, but my material isn't super strong. And I think one of the reasons why is I'm not going into it enough.
Okay.
I'm not. I get away with smiling and talking to people and building rapport really quickly. But what I'm not doing is revealing. People always say that I talk about something, but don't go into it enough. And I think that I'll get some really interesting, therapeutic, dynamic content and performances if I really engage with who I am as a person. And that's what I want to do at this point with my career and my life, because they go in tandem. My comedy career is completely in tandem with the trajectory of my life at this point, and I just feel like now's the right time to do it.
That's about the no, going into it, but not really. It's such an something I can relate to, because I feel like that was like my first like starting doing therapy, where I was like I would talk about something, but I would only talk about. I actually, funny enough, now this is I would kind of talk about certain things, but I would talk about like the level that I found it acceptable. So if there was like, say, something underlying that made me feel still ashamed or like feeling bad, I would still not go into it. So, and I also sometimes I think that actually, yeah, in regards to comedy writing, it's such a standard thing where you like, again, you kind of, you have to give the context, and then you have to do it in such a way that you still keep it funny. And but yeah, no, but yeah, this is wild. And then going back to be 21, and you were saying, so you and your mom had like a rough patch, but then you were saying earlier that you're now living together.
Yes. So just as I started my doing comedy, um, I moved back home in the lockdown because I'd lost my job. I was made redundant really quickly, and I'd been in this job for nearly 10 years in total. So, and I wasn't working for 15 months. I needed to move back home because rent and costs and things like that. But me and my mum had a good relationship then, because when I said I'd moved home last time, had that conversation, moved back out, but we were better. So moving back home was perfectly fine. And I just loved living at home. Me and my mum got on really well while in lockdown, and we did it ever since. And I was like, I'll move out when I'm ready. And she got ill. So she got cancer. and she is cancer free now, but it was massive for all of our family. She, almost died. She was in hospital for a number of months. And so I had left work. I had a number of jobs. Since I had that job for 10 years, I had a number of jobs and it just wasn't working fine. They were awful jobs. They were terrible. They caused me a lot of stress. So I was just like, the comedy's going well. I'm living with my mum. She's ill. I didn't work for quite a while. And her life has changed forever. Our life has changed forever. She's got like a feeding tube in her stomach now. She can't eat food, for example. So it was in her throat. So she can't eat and she's going through it and it's changed. And in that time, I spent a lot of time with my mum and it really changed me. It softened me a lot. It softened me a lot because it was hard. It was awful because she was in hospital for 2 months and I was always doing me and one of my brothers with her every hour of the day because the care, unfortunately, in the hospitals is very, very poor. And so she needed one of us to be with her all the time. And so because I wasn't working, I was doing the night shift. So I would do a gig. I'd explain the situation and say, can I leave? Can I go in the first half and leave in the first half? And I'd say all of them understood. I don't think anyone had any issue with it. And then I would leave, go to the hospital for 10:30, be with her until 9 a.m., go home, sleep, tidy the house, cook whatever I needed to do, and then go do a gig, do the same thing again, that rotation. Those night shifts were brutal. Oh my God. They were they were so hard because she was up every 30 minutes because I had to lift her out of bed and put her on a bed pan and stuff like that. And it was just so hard that thinking about it still makes me emotional. Like it was really, really hard. But I feel so grateful that I've been able to do that because we had such a poor relationship in our 20s. Now I'm able to be with her and build a relationship with her. And we both love each other so much that I'm so thankful that I get to. And so now that her life has changed and she she doesn't want to be alone for the rest of her life. And we had a conversation a couple of, I don't know when at some point after she was better. And I was thinking about it and I was like, how would you feel if I lived with you permanently? If I didn't think that there was someone else to go for X, Y, Z reasons. And she was like, that's what I want. I don't want to be left alone. I love having you here. I think we've got a great relationship. And I was like, I do too. And so that was the kind of decision. And so I have to make sacrifices. Like if I get a partner, I don't know what that is going to look like. In my head and some of my own insecurities say to me, I probably won't have a long-term partner. And that's just me being like, I guess, worried about it. Because I know that my mum comes first. It goes, my mum, comedy. Yeah. So any partner has to kind of deal with that, and that's hard. That'd be hard to bring someone into that situation because my mom's also a really hard person to get on with.
No way.
Oh my God.
So is that where you got the are like all your siblings as like witty as you? And would you say that is that a trait you picked up from your mom, or is it, I don't know, how much nature nurture sort of?
No, only Christopher. He's quick-witted, but no, the other ones are not. What we do all have is like we express ourselves in a very aggressive and ferocious way, and we choose anger over all emotion. That's what we get from them, and the judgment. Everything we're judgmental about everything. So yeah, that's where we get it from. So all of us, except my younger brother, he's kind. He's really nice. He's a nice person. My younger brother, he's very sweet. He's very kind, very soft. He's not quick to judge. Whereas, yeah, me, Chris, my older brother, my mum, just rude people.
Gee, you sound like, I was gonna say you sound like my family, but it's incredible to think about the things that you went through with your mom and oh man, that must have been like such a. How did you like? I guess were you using comedy? Like, were you looking at comedy? I think were you choosing as an outlet to like, deal with what was going like with everything that was happening, or was it actually your? I guess was it like the wait? Well, where was I going with this now? Basically, was it an outlet for you? Basically, was it like an outlet for you, or was it actually something that I'm kind of like working on this? Like, how much did it impact your comedy, as in like material and persona on stage and things like that? Did you feel any changes, or were you actually like, okay, this is my job now, and then I have the said like, I have to be there for my mom.
sort of thing?
This was only 6 months into doing comedy, so it wasn't. There was no thought of like, this is what I'm doing now. I didn't think that I was still doing very much open mic stuff, but I needed the comedy. Like, it was a must. There was, and to the point where, like, my relationship with my family is very all over the place, in particular for me, because of how they perceive me. But some of my family thought I was being selfish for doing the gigs and going off in the evening to do it. And I said, I need to do this because it was my only thing that I was doing. I was with my mum, sometimes 12 hours, sometimes I was doing longer ones, but all night, not sleeping, going home, taking care of the house, wasn't working. So I needed to do this because it was my only 2 or 3 hours that I felt like I was living a life or being me. And it sounds really corny, but I always hear those people saying, being like, oh, like, dance saved my life, or like, those sorts of things, isn't it? I felt that way about comedy afterwards. I was like, if I didn't have comedy, I honestly have no idea how I would have survived, because I've got a really strong network of friends now after everything, and support systems, and I understand a lot of the coping mechanisms I need. I understand comedy being one of them, but I need to have my friends around. I can't, and I relied on them a lot. They took a lot of the brunt of what I was going through, because I said to them, there's only 3 or 4 of them, but I said to them specifically, at this point right now, if I call you, I need you to answer then, because I knew what I needed, and I know I need to trust myself. And they got the message and they accepted it. So there'll be, and it wasn't every day. It might be a really bad couple of days or a bad week, and I would call my best friend, and he's incredible, and he's got a busy job, but he knew that, or he might text me saying, I'm just going to finish my call, and I'd have to go and rant or cry or something. And comedy helped alleviate some of the needs of that. I'd go there. I performed really well and consistently, right? It never affected, you wouldn't have known. You wouldn't have known that I was going through a hard time, because when I got on stage, because it feeds me, like, performing feeds me. It's the best part of it all, really. The admin around it is really, really hard, but I always get energy from performing, right? It doesn't feel like a chore when I'm doing it. It feels like I'm my most free. Now I'm allowed to be a bitch and people laugh. Now I can be quick-witted and be mean to the person at the front and they think it's funny, which is difficult in real life. And so it fed me. It was what I needed. It sustained me. And it was what made me choose to change my day job, to give it a good push. Some people are saying I'm brave for deciding to give it a good push. I feel like I've got no other option at this point. I'm 36 years old. I've lived a life that I didn't want in my 20s and stuff, choosing jobs that I didn't care about. Knowing that feeling like your mum was going to die, only showed me that there's only one life to live. I thought, okay, well, she's going to go now, and she's never going to see me flourish. And she may, to this day, not. I might never be successful. But Chris says this all the time. He feels like he's living his dream right now, my twin brother. I feel like I'm living my dream right now, right? If this is the most I do in comedy, I'm really thankful that I've been able to do it. And it wouldn't have happened if those series of events didn't happen, including my mum, unfortunately. But our relationship is better for it. I'm happier now than I've ever been. And I get to perform regularly, which I love.
That's amazing, because I was thinking about, I think one of like my saddest one of my saddest thoughts is the fact that my mom can't see any of this. No, she's my mom's passed away 2 years ago, but also I just realized now about this thing where I was telling you about the therapist, the Eastern European therapist I had. I basically did like about 6-7 months with him, and I was like, okay, you've taught me a couple of things. Let me do it on my own, and I'll come back to you. And this was in February. Now we're going a couple of months. Basically, a couple of weeks later, my mom gets ill. Fly to Romania, stay with her in the hospital again. I mean, it was quite a weird, because like our time was there was a lockdown, like the lockdown, because if like, oh, have you heard about the lockdown? No, but yeah, there was, but no, sorry. What I meant was the hospital had restrictions.
Yeah.
So we weren't really allowed to like go, and so we were only allowed to go once a week. But I still went to Romania and stayed with my sister. Just kind of like hoping for like mom to come back home and stuff like that. And anyway, what I was going with this? Yeah, sadly, mom passed away, and then a couple of months later, so she passed away in April. Now, in May, I'm looking for grief counseling. However, when I reach out to my therapist, I didn't tell him that script. I was like, "Oh, by the way, um, I've been like basically told by like my GP to start like doing therapy again. How about we like link up?"
Your mum had died.
No, wait. This is the thing. So now we were in the meeting, like the first meeting. It's like, so how have you been? And I remember going, oh, you know what? Actually, after we had the whatever we had, um, I felt good for a while. I felt like it was better. I was like dealing with things much easier. And then my mom got ill, and then he just looks at me and then he goes like, yeah. And then, I kind of like, I managed to cope with like, the idea and, thinking, what if she like, doesn't get out of the hospital? What's going to happen like with me? But then she died. And I remember his face. He froze. And I had to ask, I was like, is the camera still on? Because he just like, wait, what what? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, and that's why I'm here now. And we started
The voice.
kind of.
Oh my.
Because I think because I relate to what you were saying before about like the way you were like speaking in the family where like everything gets like it's one emotion which is anger. I feel like the way I grew up, it was very much like a lot of sass and a lot of like sarcasm. Like you wouldn't tell someone, oh, there is a cup of tea, or like there is a cup there that needs washing. You wouldn't go like, oh, would you mind washing that cup, your cup? No, it would be more the case of that looks kind of lonely there, or like whatever bullshit stuff like that you'd come through. And then I also realized that sometimes now, and I think you've noticed even before when you were saying like really like some wonderful thing about the things about your life, but then I was like, sometimes I would just like have like a little giggle, because that's like the way I cope with with stuff. And yeah, that's the way I was. I remember, because we were doing it over Zoom, and I was looking at him and I was smiling the whole time as I was telling him. And that's why I think he just like shocked him to see me, going like, yeah, and then this happened. How crazy is that? And yeah, it was just wild. And I kind of, and I feel, I see what you're saying, man. And it sounds amazing that, at least like you said, you discovered. And actually, you know what, I agree with you about the thing where people say, oh, like the courage of doing comedy, or like the courage of doing what you're really passionate about. I'm at the moment in a situation where I still have a part-time job, so I can like protect, so to make it like have enough income to pay for my living situation. But I I struggle, like that's it. Like I'm actually, if anything, I'm glad that I found my said outlet, because otherwise, now sometimes thinking on, oh, I would have to like find a job and stick with it. It sounds so unbearable. But while it's like, well, this is my job, I gotta have. I mean, I want to make it work, because otherwise, I don't know what else I would do.
Absolutely. I mean, after that job I had for 10 years, I had 3 jobs in 15 months. Um, and all left in different situations. One of them I had to leave because it was so awful. The other one, they paid me off to leave because I upset another manager. And that one I can't wait to talk about when I can, but I don't think the year's up. On my end, but I had to. But that one is ridiculous. And then the other one, I didn't pass probation, and that was while my mom was in hospital. And after these 3 jobs in succession, all of which I hated, all of which got progressively worse, I was like, I can't do this shit anymore. I had this job for 10 years that I was in. That isn't what I wanted, but it was fine. But the reason why I stayed is because it was easy. Then I had to face real life after the pandemic. And I was like, this is not it. I'd rather struggle. And I'm not struggling financially. I've got my mum. I live at home. My mum, we've got a great relationship. I've got great friends. I've got great support. You know, I always say, like, on paper, it might look terribly because I live at home. I'm on the salary I was on like 12 years ago. I'm single. Um, so for a prospective partner, that might seem, I'm 36, nearly 37. This might be a bad thing, but it can't be, because I'm happier than I've ever been, because I've never felt so right about something than when I'm performing, right? It's never felt, what I'm doing right now has never felt more natural to me than anything I've ever done. And I'm expressing myself like I want to, and I'm getting like the validation that I need. My relationships, for the most part, not all of them, are strong. And this I feel like I'm living life. I really feel like I'm living life, and I really feel like I'm making the most of it. And it's difficult in your 20s when you've got all these insecurities, and I have my insecurities about certain things. But now that I've been having therapy and I'm more in tune with who I am as a person, and the real thing that I've been working on since therapy was my resilience. I had no resilience. I was very fickle, very easy to bend, very quick to anger, and that was always my main focus. And I feel like I've got like so much better with that. I'm so much better as a person. So now I can face everything I need to do. Now I can face all of the challenges, and my mum in hospital was like the biggest one. Coming to terms with like your parents, as know way more than I do, is I never faced that before. Now I know at some point she will die. And I wasn't prepared for that before. Now I'm more prepared. You'll never be truly prepared, I believe, but now I'm more prepared for it. And so I know I need to make the most of the time that I have. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't have therapy. I would not have been able to do that because I'm too defensive. I'm too like stubborn as a person. And I felt like I know everything. To this day, I still feel like I know everything. And I don't know everything. And being able to express myself is, for me, it might be different for other people, but I think everyone wants to express themselves in some way, personally. I need to express myself. And so therapy allows that. My performing allows that. My friends allow that. And I just think now I'm on the back end of it. I will still go through challenges. I still have many difficult situations. I have this faith and belief now. Before I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get through it. I have no doubt that when I hit a difficult situation, I'm going to get through it. I have no question because I know what I need to do. If I don't know, I'll figure it out because I've got so many good outlets.
This is so fantastic. It sounds so wonderful, and I think it's just been really like beautiful just listening to you. No, I'm being serious.
Inside and out.
It's just been incredible, and I genuinely I see like I don't know like the way you talk about everything and the way you were. It sounds like again you've been through a lot, and then you're dealing with it in such a wonderful way. So well done. Like I genuinely again there was no set expectation of what this would be or like how, and obviously we had quite a few challenges. But it was wonderful to having you on, and well, now it's the part where you we talk about like where do people find you, where do they find out about like your comedy shows, anything else that's happening for you. So yeah, please tell us.
Yeah, so I do stand-up comedy and like emceeing, and you can find me on Instagram. My name is Matthew Ali with 2 T's, and my Instagram handle is a bit of a stupid one. It's all teeth and chips with underscore under each of those. I also run a night with another person called Zach in Northwest London called Rise Up Comedy. So if you like comedy and you're around the area, do come. We get a lot of great acts coming on. But apart from that, I post my own gigs every month, so you can come and have a look. Not in May. I've got maybe 5 gigs, and I can't wait to have no gigs. But I'll be back in it in June.
Well,
or whenever this comes out. I know I just did the dates, but whenever this comes out.
well, yeah, don't worry. This. What are you doing? The Fringe this year?
No, I didn't enjoy the Fringe when I went last year and that was the first time I'd gone both as a comedian and as a spectator, and so I just have no interest in going this year. I will go again, just not for now.
Fair enough. Which is again, look, I think you are probably but you are one of the most grounded people I've ever talked to.
I need to listen to the other episodes.
No. no, it's not to say just comedy wise, but I'm saying like in not podcast, not comedy. I think maybe comedy wise, but like the way you describe, you're like, I'm not feeling this, doesn't feel right, I'm not doing it, or I felt like this, I did that. You sound like you put the thought into a lot of things, and anyway, that was just an observation.
That's actually really, I think that because people talk about like comedians and, the joke, they'll be like, oh, a comedian in therapy and this is my therapy. And, comedians and some of the like most tapped as in like negative like people. And I'm like, I don't know, boy, I'm in full joy mode right now. So I'm not trying to express my pain. That's why I need to go deep down but I'm good. But it's taken a lot. Honestly, I never thought I'd been through a lot, but I think like in my 20s, I have gone through my life experience. And one thing I'm really trying to do is question myself a lot. Sometimes to my detriment, as I say, but I do, I'm constantly trying to reflect on me and my own behavior and what I can do. And I think it's so important because so many of us try and put it on other people, including in comedy. They'd be like, oh, that audience was bad, or they do this. Now, it might be a tough room, but I truly believe we need to put it on ourselves. I need to take responsibility. As an MC in particular, when the room is not particularly, I could say it's a tough audience, but I was the MC. I was the one who's supposed to get the energy going. And I believe that. Um, and so I have to keep working on yourself, whether it's in comedy or outside. It's the people that don't work on themselves that get me. The ones who just like, this is who I am as a person. You're 30 years old. You are not who you are meant to be for the rest of your life, okay? 30, 35, right? We hopefully, have got a while to go. You just need to constantly look at yourself and see how can you change. And that's what I try and do as much as possible.
Oh, that's actually, it's funny that you mentioned a bit about like, oh, you're 30, because I'm working on a bit now where I talk about like being 27, and I'm like, yeah.
You don't look it.
Whoa. Just for context, I have told Matthew that he looks very well for being 36, and now he's basically telling me that I look older than 20. Anyway, I'm actually not 27 yet. I'm only 27 at my.
This one grown, bitch.
But yeah, I have this whole bit where I'm like, I know I'm only 27, and I complain too much for a 27-year-old, and I'm just talking like trying to get into like, oh well, I had enough though, I feel, and but again, I just think again it's relative. But it's funny because you were like, oh, we know you're 30, this is not who you are, and sometimes I find, I don't know, basically sometimes I find that I turn into my dad at times, and I'm like, fuck, shit. I get like really angry, or I get like I have like a very black or white sort of attitude where it's like, it's yes or no, good or bad, and I'm like, oh my God, what's happening? Is that me? And then I have to like get out of it, and I'm like, oh no, actually I can't change. Like again, like if I look at how I was last year, this year I'm in a much healthier place, and it's much healthier than 2 years ago. Again, it's not like by miles, I didn't become a saint, but it's good to see it's good to see that change, and to see that I guess progress, even though sometimes, like you said, because you were saying earlier, where like, oh, on paper something can look really bad, but then it's actually, again, it's relative, and it's about like how you feel about it. And you seem like you're doing great, and I don't know, you are doing great, and you seem like you're really happy, and you sound like it. So well done to you, and yeah, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. And thank you for the delicious tea.
You're very welcome. This is been brought to you by no, actually, they're not our sponsors, but anyway, it was TikTok Tea, in case you want to buy it. Not from the TikTok social media app. Anyway, that's it. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
All right. Okay. Well, how was it? Again, besides of the whole technical difficulties stuff, did you enjoy the conversation? Did you like it? Was it what you hoped for? Was it better? Was it more? I hope so. I hope it was more. I while I was listening to this, to try and like get it together, I've noticed how much I've noticed. I remembered how much of a good time I had speaking with Matthew. He's yeah, it was. I think it was a great conversation, and he'll be back. I think in a couple of months, hopefully. But that all depends on you. You gotta listen. You gotta ask. You gotta DM him. No, I'm joking. But look, yeah, I'm hopeful to have him back because there were still a lot of stuff that again it's been lost, and we want to get it back in the most natural way. Some of the conversation, some of the topics that we discussed, it would just be a shame to miss it for good. But look, I'm gonna go now, and I'll see you back, or you'll hear from me back next week. Check out Matthew's socials on the bio of this episode. Check out my socials. you know what to do. And thank you for listening, and stay skillful. Bye for now.